Rev up your engines!
Well, the first for sale Chevy Blazer electric has rolled off the assembly line. Now they're starting to sell the Blazer electric vehicles. There's only one big problem. Well, it's probably going to be a whole bunch of problems. It's a GM electric vehicle. We see the problems they've had. But the main problem is it's made at the Ramos Arizpe plant. Now, they don't tell you any of this stuff in their stupid little articles, but guess what? It's in Mexico. Now, why would you take high-tech, a new design, and build it in Mexico? Well, we all know why. They have brains in our heads, right? Because it's cheaper to make them down there. They don't pay the Mexicans as much money. It's cheaper to build them there. Now, I guarantee you, they're not going to sell that many of these things in Mexico. They're going to be shipped to the United States. The cheapest one is 48 grand, and that's what they say. You know how they mark it up? And a luxury SS brand starts at $70,000. Well, $69,995, not including manufacturer's destination charges, blah, 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 right? Now, I don't get this. They're making the things down in Mexico. It's cheaper to make them, but they're charging a ton of money for them. Let's see. What do we have? The usual American corporate mentality. Make them as cheap as you can and get as much as you can for these things. Don't pass the savings on to the consumer. Charge them as much money as you can get away with, right? Well, guess what? The crap's going to hit the fan at some point in time, and people won't buy these things. I already read an article that the Volkswagen ID.4 in Germany has slowed down their production because they can't sell them. The Germans and the Europeans aren't buying them. And I quote, following a smaller than anticipated demand for its EVs built near its Emden facility in northern Germany, Volkswagen is reducing its production output and giving its EV employees an extended vacation. Some of these breaks will be permanent. The Bells are already toiling for the electric vehicles. The Europeans are pushing them, right? They got to shut their production down. They said, we're going to lay off some of our workers probably permanently because people aren't buying them. As I've said for years, you can build it, but will people buy it? And if they're not going to be buying these things in Europe, imagine what's going to happen in the United States. Europe, everything's closer together. You don't have to drive that far. In the United States, the vast distances in Canada between places, you're going to be driving with these electric vehicles. I don't think so. If they're already having a less than anticipated demand for them in Germany, what's happening? Well, don't make so many now. Don't make so many. And you know, they'll have some PR BS about how great they are. Probably pay some places around like J.D. Power or something. Tell them it's a great vehicle, people. Rate it as number one. You know? I mean, I remember a few years ago they rated Rivian as number one, right? The things hardly sell any of them. The company's on the verge of bankruptcy, right? But they were rated as car of the year. Don't ever listen to the crap those media people write about stuff because they got the corporations paying them money in their back pocket to talk about that stuff. Follow the money. In this case, even the Germans, oh, well, we're going to have to make lots of these. Nobody's buying the stupid things. I find it hilarious. I'll be laughing to my grave with this one. Let's see what happens in a few years when Americans start producing a whole bunch of these crappy things and nobody buys them. You've seen the videos in China where they have thousands of electric cars in a field, and in France where they had a whole bunch of them in a field. The government had bought these electric cars and with the bus, so they just abandoned them in fields. Well, when people have to pay for them and not governments, the people just won't buy them. They won't buy them all, and then, oh man, did I make a mistake? They'll see, hey, Joe down the street bought one. What a pile of crap. I'm not going to buy one of those, right? Yeah, now the rubber's starting to hit the road and the electric cars don't look so good anymore. Even in Deutschland, the Germans won't buy them. Missing Link says my 2005 Honda Pilot has an engine code. Help. It's P0420. Catalytic system below threshold, bank 1. So, what do you think it could be? What should I do? Should I replace the cat? Don't just go and replace the cat. When you get the inefficient catalytic converter code, it means the catalytic converter isn't working efficient. It could be a bad cat. Could be a bad oxygen sensor. Could be leaking fuel injectors. Could be an engine that burns oil. Could be any of literally dozens of things. But on the other hand, if it runs okay, I've had customers drive them years that way, especially in Tennessee. There is no emissions testing in Tennessee. There's no inspection at all for cars. So if it runs okay, I had a customer in Houston. He had that for 5 years in his Toyota. And then the 6th year he brought it to me and he said, I got to get it inspected. Could you turn that light off and reset things, which I'd done for 5 years. And then he was able to get it inspected because it really wasn't that bad. You could reset it. Wouldn't come back for 400 or 500 miles, right? Then the 6th year, I said, I don't have to. The light's not on anymore. It was such a low limit of being bad that he had switched from Exxon to Shell gas, and the gas burnt better, the Shell, so then the cat wasn't inefficient anymore. So, I mean, if it runs okay, you don't have to do anything. Other than if you live in a state where they do emissions testing, you're screwed, and you'll have to fix it. And it could be any of dozens of things. Absolute dozens. Now, you might buy some of that catalytic converter cleaner, pour it in, drive it 250 miles. Hey, reset it. If it doesn't come back, great. It cleaned it out. But don't just go change the cat, because that is a Honda. All right? Honda cats do not go bad. I've never seen a Honda cat go bad by itself. Theoretically, they last forever. They go bad because the engine's burning oil, fuel injectors are leaking. If you just replace that cat, that code's going to come back within months or a year or so, because whatever's wrong with the vehicle will make the other cat go bad. So, very complex crap. If it runs okay, hey, you might just let it slide. Shades1X says, I drove with my e-brake on. Are there any consequences? Got an 05 Acura. I accidentally drove with my brake on for 5 to 10 minutes, going 35 to 40. I smelled burning. What should I do? It's an Acura. That's your rear brakes. If you want to be conservative, take the wheels off, look at the rear braking system. As long as you're not down to the bare metal, 5-10 minutes usually is never enough to burn it out. Matter of fact, my wife left emergency brake on the Matrix and she drove 35 minutes and I could smell it, and then I pulled them off and there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. I'm sure you didn't have it on super tight. If you had it super tight, it wouldn't move, right? So it's probably on a little bit. Probably didn't do any damage, but just take the rear wheels off, look, the parking brakes are in the rear, see if they're worn or anything. But generally, that short period of time is not going to be damaged anything unless you had it on super tight. Now you would have heard the tires squealing too, because then when you stopped it slamming on, it would get overheat. You smelled it because it was probably on lightly. I doubt if it's done any damage. Take the wheels off, we'll get it inspected. JJ Moon says, I have a little bit of oil in my intake filter from a small tube. I got a 2015 300S V6. The air intake filter is a small amount of oil. I've never changed the PCV valve. What do you think? All right, well, change the valve. PC valves are cheap. Change the PCV valve. Get an OEM one. Don't go to a discount auto parts store. Half the time their stuff's crap. Buy an original equipment one at the dealer. They're not that expensive to replace. If it fixes it, great. Now, if it doesn't fix it, only two things can do that. One, you got too much oil in the engine. Park your car, turn it off on a flat surface, wait 5 minutes. Check the oil dipstick. If it's over the full on the top line, suck some oil out. You got too much oil. If it's low on oil, it means your piston rings are worn. The piston rings seal the pressure, and when they wear, when it explodes, the rings don't seal, and that pressure then, instead of pushing the piston down, goes around the piston, gets into the crankcase, and then it will blow through there from the extra pressure, and you'll get a little bit of oil because it'll blow a little oil in it too. Those are the only things that it can really be. So, pray it's a PCV valve, you got a little bit too much oil, because if not, your piston rings are worn. And if they are, hey, just drive it and check the oil. You rebuilding an engine like that, 2015 300S, you're looking at super expensive job. And I mean, oil's cheap. You can just add oil if it uses a little bit of oil. Devin8778 says, is there a history of Honda having transmission issues? I want to know more about Honda automatic transmissions. My main concern stems to the fact I'm looking at a second generation Honda CR-V, and I'm worried that they have problems. What do you think? All right, well, Honda has a history of automatic transmission problems. That's their weakest link. Bunch of the really old, decades ago, V6 engines with the automatics, they were too strong, they burnt the transmissions out. I've seen Honda Civic automatic transmissions decades ago fall apart. Recently, they do a pretty good job. Honda and Toyota engineers are excellent, and anything in the last 5 years they make are pretty good. Now, I like real automatic transmissions. I don't like CVTs. Now, Toyota makes good ones. So does Honda, right? I just don't like them. I know how complex they are, and I know from history they never last as long as a conventional automatic. Let's say somebody smashes into one of my wife's cars. I hit another car. I would probably get a RAV4 or a Camry because they still offer an 8-speed automatic transmission in their new cars. The Corollas are all CVTs, which I do not like. They can last okay. I'm just not a fan. The automatics, they're tried and true. They feel good. They can go in Toyota and Honda hundreds of thousands of miles if you don't abuse them. So that's what I like. And if you notice, you want to see the truth, you say, well, everybody's putting CVTs. Yeah, in the cheaper cars. Look at the luxury cars. You don't see them in the luxury cars. And those are phenomenal to drive, phenomenally expensive to fix when they break. You know, you get a good one, like like a ZF 8-speed automatic. Those are pretty bulletproof as long as you change the fluid once in a while. But with the Hondas, I still would rather have an automatic transmission than the CVTs. And I just would. Like you say, if you're looking at a Honda CRV, you said, if you're looking at a Honda CRV, better to get an older one that's got an actual transmission with low mileage than it would be to get a new one with a CVT, as far as I'm concerned. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.